Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a Kickstarter preview for a game called Neta Tanka. This is from Boite, a French company, but the game itself must take place in North America, maybe Canada.
Yeah, so they call these people nomads, which are probably Native Americans of some sort. It's a very interesting game. Boite also did Outlive, which is one of my favorite games from last year, which is also on Kickstarter. But the designer himself, his name is R.V. Regal, did Shakespeare. I don't know if you've played Shakespeare before, but that's a fantastic card drafting game that I think it's really underrated. But this is a worker placement game. So
it's completely different than that.
Yeah, each player is going to have a set number of nomads, which are your workers. It's going to be 3 or 4 or even more in a 2-player game. So it's going to scale depending upon the number of players that you have. We have a 4-player game set up, so everyone has 3 of these workers or nomads. You're going to be placing them onto the village. So the idea behind the game is that there is a common village and everyone's providing generosity to the village because the old elder, who is the Neta Tanka, will be dying, so you're trying to push a new leader in. And there's 4 spots around here which are kind of like the elder leaders of the tribes. You're all contributing to this specific village. The game board itself, these are all worker placement spots within the game. There's 3 different types of worker placement spots. You have spots that only 1 player can go into. That can be broken through a copy rule within the game. You have a spot, the elder spots, and there's 4 of these elder spots with the dashed lines around them. Again, only 1 worker can go into them. However, it's a spot that can never be copied in the game. And then you have the outside locations. There is 1 location up here, and there's another location up here. This is an all spot, meaning as many people can go into these spots as you wish. However, only 2 different colored nomads can go in there. So if Dave and I are in there, other players at the table cannot go into that location.
Yeah, it's an interesting rule. I've never seen that little addition to a worker placement, and I think the limitation speaks to the thought that they gave to the game.
Also, you're going to notice all of these weird lines connecting all of these, or several of these different locations. These are links. This is one of the cool things about the game, is that when you're putting your workers on the board, you'll be taking those actions. However, if you have a worker in one location and a worker in another location, and they are connected by a link, you also get that action. So there's some bonuses that you'll be able to use depending on where you place your workers.
Yeah, it also sets up really cool combinations that you wouldn't normally see in a worker placement game, because depending, like Jeremy said, how you place those, you can take them in any order. So you might take this item here, which allows you to power this other space, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's a really neat portion of the game. It's kind of like the generosity of you contributing to the community or the village as a whole. Each player is also going to have a tribe board in front of them. This is going to house a variety of different areas, but there's 3 main areas on here that you need to be noted, or that you need to note. The first part is the tents across the top. These are tents that you're trying to build within your village. You're building them with specific types of resources, and the furthest one that you build by the end of the game is how many victory points you'll gain for that section. You have a section right in the center. This is your totem pole, and you're trying to build this with height. This also requires 2 very specific types of resources, and the person that has the most of these, or the highest totem pole at the end, is going to get an X number of victory points, plus more victory points depending on the types of resources they use to build that totem pole. And on the bottom you have a food chart. Now, you're never going to have to pay or feed your workers in this game, which is great. However, you can contribute to the village's food supply, and that's noted by this bottom track. And you're going to always fill from left to right. However, if you fill 5 spaces, either with mushrooms or with meat, you're going to unlock a token, which is your copy token. This is the way that you can break placement rules in the game by going to the same location that other workers are.
Yeah, it's significant because that bottom part will score you some points, and all 3 of these areas very independently score points for you by the end of the game. But that bottom part, if at least you can get halfway across, you're going to get that copy token, which, like Jeremy said, allows you to break the cardinal rule of a worker placement game and copy an action in certain locations.
And the far left is going to house your different kinds of what's called handicrafts. They're cards in the game. They're crafting. You're going to be able to craft drums, weapons, and then garments for your villagers. These are cards that are represented over here. You get points for crafting these with very specific, again, types of resources, and you're also going to get extra victory points if you have sets of them. So if you have 1 of each of them, you're getting an additional 5 victory points if you've created them. Also, each player is going to start with an objective card. There's 4 of these in the game, so they're going to be randomly distributed. Each one of them is worth, at most, 5 victory points, and it kind of steers the direction by which you need to complete certain things.
Yeah, it definitely points you in the right direction. Like we'd mentioned, there's a lot of different ways of scoring points. So there's 4 basic ways on your player board that's going to direct you how to score them. But this card here will sort of point you in a particular direction. These cards are different, but some of them have some similarities too, so multiple players can be headed down the same path.
Some other components in the game, you have generosity tokens. These are victory points that you'll be able to grab through the course of the game. Also, you can grab them from various areas on your board. You can also turn in some victory points using some of the spots on the board itself to be able to power actions. There's 5 different types of resources in the game. Those are wood. You have skin, like buffalo skin, that you'll be using to build teepees. You have meat, and then you have mushrooms, and then the final one is bone, which is really hard to get within the game. There's only a couple ways in order to get that very specific type of resource. The last spot is the Neta Tanka cards. These are very powerful cards. There's going to be 5 of them out for display for every single game, and you only acquire those from going to the Neta Tanka himself.
Yeah, that middle space is the Neta Tanka spot, and you can do a few different things there, but one of them is collecting those cards, and depending on what's out there, they can give you a significant one-time boon where you're just collecting a ton of resources that might take you otherwise a couple turns to gather.
One more thing I'll mention, there are these link tokens that you see here. These are all just placed face down. It is a link that you can use from going to these 2 locations, but the great thing here is it's not a set link. You get to look through that stack and pick whatever specific power and then remove it from the game. So the game is incredibly simple to play. On your turn, starting with the first player, you're simply going to take one of your nomads and you're going to place them anywhere that you wish on the board, paying attention to those rules. You can't go to a location the other player has gone to, obviously, and you just place a worker. And for instance, I place him here. Now the thing is, you don't get to take the action of that space until everyone's placed all of their workers. Once all the players have placed all their workers in turn order, starting with that first player, you're going to pull off your nomads in any order that you so wish. So you can do one action that's going to power another action on the board. Now, there's a variety of different spots on this board. I think there's 18 or 20 of them total. So there's a lot of them that we could talk about. Yeah. The main ones I want to talk about, though, are the CANOE cards. There are 10 cards in a 4-player game. These are locations, but they're also kind of the round tracker in the game. So a new one will come up every single round. This gives you some flexibility on doing some couple different things. There's ones that allow you to grab food. There's ones that allow you to grab the visiting nomad. He's kind of a random guy that can come out from time to time. He's going to give you the first player marker. Plus, he's going to be able to be used in the following round to kind of copy locations, just like the copy action would do.
Yeah, he's kind of like an extra worker for that next round with some limitations. He's not going to allow you to activate any of those links using him.
Yeah, there's 2 locations that you really need to be aware of. There's one here and one here. And these are, I'm sorry, they're here. These are the locations that allow you to kind of contribute generosity to the game. Now, the game is not co-op in any specific way. However, there is kind of a cooperative aspect to funneling resources back into the village. One of them is this location here, which allows you to kill a buffalo.
Right.
Because it ties in very specifically to this location, or to hunt a buffalo, and then to slaughter that buffalo to be able to get resources from it. The same thing up here. This allows you to harvest 3 wood and 1 mushroom, but it doesn't allow you to collect them. So going to both of these locations grants you victory points, but it doesn't grant you the resources from going to them. It's kind of unique.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about those 2 spots too are these spots below them.
Yeah.
These are spots where you're actually going to be able to collect a lot of those same types of resources. However, if you go to one of these spots, the following round, there's these little footsteps. You have to move your nomad from that space up to this space. So you're going to get 1 fewer nomad on your next turn, and it naturally kind of has this progression to where you've taken some, but now you're contributing in some fashion.
The importance of these 2 spots are tied into the resources that they allow you to create. This one allows you to create food and skins, depending on if there's something here to slaughter, and this one allows you to create wood and mushrooms. Now, the economy of the game is really cool because you can only collect resources typically if they're in those locations on the board. So there's be timing aspects in the game where you may go to a spot like this to collect wood, but there's no wood there. You can't just collect it from the supply unless a location has a curved hand in blue underneath of it, such as this location. This location allows you to collect directly from the supply, but these locations, including the link, you have to collect from these specific areas, and that's kind of the cooperation that goes on within the game.
Yeah, and like we said, we're not going to cover each and every single space here, but suffice it to say, all of these things are interconnected.
Absolutely.
So you're going to be producing meat, wood, or skin and getting those out on the board, then going to other places to collect those, going to even yet more places in order to gather handicraft cards. Once you have them, then you have to build those by going to yet another action where you're allowed to take resources and put them and slowly build those handicrafts and flip them over eventually.
Yeah, so just to keep going across that line, you're going to be building TPs, which require specific types of resources, building them left or right, putting the food that you've gathered on these locations from left to right, getting victory points at the end of the game and unlocking powers, and then building your totem pole higher. Now, there is a totem pole board over here as well that's kind of a, it's end of the game victory points for sure, but it's also a race to see whoever can build the higher totem pole, because you can only leapfrog other players if you have more discs in that totem pole.
Yeah, it's cool because you're going to get some base points for your totem pole based on the wood and the bone that you've used to build it. But like Jeremy said, if you're the first to build, you automatically go up to the top of this chart. You're going to get 8 points. If no one else builds for the rest of the game, you just got 8 free points.
Yeah.
But as people do build and beat you, then there's some jockeying around that goes on that board, and it's important to note that if you're at the bottom or if you haven't built anything, you're getting negative points on this board.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, on your turn, you're going to pull all of your workers off, take all of those actions. Each player will do so in turn, and then you're going to start a new round simply by taking a new card. This is going to be round 2 and so forth as you go through the game. You're going to play in a 4-player game, 10 rounds, and at the end of the game, you're going to tally up your points. There's a variety of ways to score points, as we said. How far you've got on your tent board, how high your totem is, if you have combinations of specific things within your totem, the kind of foods that you use. Mushrooms are worth less than meat, depending on where you place them on your board. Right. And then any generosity points you have, plus your handicrafts, any of those, your weapons, your garments, and your drums that you've built through the course of the game, and any sets that you have.
Yeah, this is truly a point salad game. Yep. You can get to where you're going in a very, very different fashion than the player to your right and your left. With all those different things that you can do on your board, you can completely ignore the totem.
Yeah.
Now, you might get negative 3 points by doing so, but you might have built all of your TPs where else no one else had.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I read through the rules, I thought, well, this is just kind of a basic worker placement game. There's nothing really new that it brought to the game until I got to 2 very distinct things. One is the timing aspect. Having the resources on the board itself and having to have those resources available makes timing in the game very important, especially in a multiplayer game.
Oh, it can be very brutal.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I go to a place where I'm going to collect skins and someone else produced the skins and they're going before me, but they had some other links that allowed them to take some of those skins away from this spot. And then when it comes time for me to collect, I'm only collecting maybe a couple.
And you just said links. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
The links within the game, you are pooled between getting bonus actions, between maybe an action you don't really want to take and an action you do want to take, but taking that link, or even having 2 actions you really want to take and having a really perfect link. So there's some satisfaction on deciding on where you want to go and what you want to do each round.
Yeah, those links, the ones that will stand out right away are the ones where you can get 2 spaces and then the link in between synergizes with those 2 spaces. Yeah. So you're taking one big massive turn. Now, it's unlikely after a few turns that anyone's going to allow you to do that again, but it can happen. The other cool thing is when someone takes a spot that you think, oh, I need to do that, there's usually a link somewhere to do the same thing so that you can still get that action that you want to get done without necessarily going to the sort of prime location.
Yeah. So guys, that is Neta Tanka. It's from the same designer that did Shakespeare. So if you guys like that game, by all means take a look at this. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.